Hey everyone, it's Ashley and welcome back to another card making video. This one is going to be a fun summer card, and I am using a image from Pool Party stamp set by Fawn. I'll be using the unicorn, the pool float or the inner tube, and then his sunglasses. And I wanted this card to have bright fun colors, so I'm choosing a teal, a pink, and a blue. And I wanted there to be a little bit of definition, so I am just going to use 2 shades of markers in each color family. So for the teal, the darkest one I'm using is BG13. So you see me just going at the top and the bottom, and then in the center I'll leave a little bit of a white space, but to help blend it all out I'm using my lighter shade of BG23. And I'm going to be doing the same thing with the pinks and the purples. And the purples I use are V15 and V12, and pinks are RV13 and RV21. So I'm using the RV13 as the darker, and I'm just doing the same shading. And then I'm going to take the RV21 and blend it out. Because this image is pretty small, I just wanted there to be a little bit of definition so that it looks like the light reflects the inner tube. And I will be adding a white gel pen to help that even more. That is something I always try to do, but I can't tell you how many times I get to the end of the card, ready to send it. I've put glossy accents on it or glitter or something, and I forgot to do any white gel pen. So today I made sure to remember. So using V15 as my darkest and V12 for my lightest. And when I zoom in and bring it up to the camera in a little bit, you'll be able to see how there is a little bit of whiteness or white in the middle. And then I am just using those same colors to do the hair on the unicorn. And I wanted my unicorn to remain white, but I felt like it was a little stark. So you'll see me go in with 2 very light shades, a BG10 that I'm going to go around the body, and then an RV00 that I color in the unicorn horn and the hoofs. And I know I want to add glitter to those. So here I'm just coloring in the hooves and the little unicorn horn. And this is where I'm just going to go around and trace the outer line of the body. And I will be using the coordinating dies to cut these out. And I wanted to start with the image first because I'm using glossy accents, and I wanted that part to be dry before I added it to the mini action wobbler to make it an interactive card. So we're going to go ahead and do our die cutting. And I'm sorry, this is off camera, but I am just putting it in my sandwich plate, cutting those out. And I love how the inner tube cuts the circle out in the center. And I chose the inner tube. It does come with a beach towel, but you'll see my card design a little later, but I wanted there to be a scalloped open window with water. When you open the card, that's where the image actually is, so it kind of just peeks out. And I needed a place to hide the mini action wobbler, so that's why I chose the circle inner tube. I felt like it had a bigger base that I could hide. And I am just doing some simple white gel pen highlights. And this shade is, or I'm sorry, not shade, it's a white. This point is 0.8 thickness. And then this is where I'm using glossy accents to make it look like the inner tube is shiny, real-like. And I'm also going to use it as the glue to hold my unicorn on top of it. So I am just going through and tracing each of those color quadrants. And I'll be adding the unicorn on top. And then we will put him aside so that he has plenty of time to dry. Because the next thing I'm going to do is take some Tailored Expressions 118-pound watercolor cardstock. I'm going to put it on a board, but I really want a watercolor, but I want the image to pop out. So I need to now emboss with white embossing powder, and I'm going to be using the Summer Vibes background stamp by Tailored Expressions. It is just a fun stamp of all summer themed images. So there's a hot air balloon, pineapples, an airplane, a canoe, a starfish, shells, a swimsuit, ice cream, drinks, flamingo. There is just anything you would think of, flip-flops, a sun, a sailboat, palm trees. It's just a really fun stamp set. So I'm gonna go ahead and first I'm gonna powder it up with the anti-static tool, and I will be using Versamark. So there's the anti-static, and I just want to do that so that it all falls off where it doesn't need to go. Then using Versamark, I'm going to ink it up really well. I did put on a little bit of adhesive on the back of my cardstock so it stays. And to get a good impression, I'm going to do that twice. And it's going to be really hard to see because it's white on white. And then I'm embossing with Simon Says Stamp, and it's a fine detail white embossing powder. And I will just generously apply the white embossing powder. And this is where I noticed that one little centerpiece didn't have enough powder. So I love these little spoons. I think this was a Jennifer McGuire tip of adding the little clips to keep a spoon in there. Okay, and I'm just going to put that away so that I don't spill that by accident. And then I'm going to take out my heating gun, and I am just heating it up. Again, it's going to be really hard to see it change, but you know it is ready to go when the powder melts and turns into a shiny substance. So it almost looks shiny on your paper. You can overheat your embossing powder and it becomes dull and flat and almost oily. So you just want to keep moving it around your paper until all the powder is melted. And it does help if you warm up your embossing gun beforehand. And I am using a hardboard just so I don't ruin my surface. And I don't need to tape this one off because I am just going to paint to the edge. So I have actually used Tailored Expression watercolors, and this palette is from earlier, so just to reactivate it, I'm just adding some water drops to it. I believed I used the colors Jelly Donut for the purple, Lollipop that I'll be using first for the pink, Blue Raspberry, and a Cookie Monster. And I am just wetting my paper beforehand to help the color sort of glide on. And I do have this video sped up, so I wish I watercolored this quickly, but I do not. This whole video is sped up, so just remember that when you see me coloring or taping or cutting or painting. This is the Cookie Monster color, and at each time I reactivate this palette, instead of cleaning it up and starting fresh, I do water down the watercolors even more or dilute them. And I am pretty heavy with the purple. I know that is where I'm going to do some die cutting, and it won't have a big purple piece when I'm finished. And you just really paint until the colors show up how you want it, but you see when I take my paper towel, it really dilutes it. So then I'm just going to do several layers. but you can do it as dark or as light as you want. And I just keep going back and forth, and I do end up using my heating tool to help dry it and so that the colors stay more vibrant. So I'm just going to go ahead and dry it just to keep the pace going. And this is such a fun technique. It's just something you can do a whole bunch of beforehand. Just have a whole bunch of backgrounds ready to go, and then just add or die cut things later onto them. You could just do, because you can notice how much more watercolor I have left. And I actually cleaned this up afterwards, but I could have gotten, oh my goodness, like the pink and the purple, there's enough to do like 10 more cards there. The blues I probably would have had to add more. And your watercolor paper does still warp sometimes, so you saw me kind of blow the back of it to try to heat it up. And then I do like to add a little bit of interest, so I'm putting on some black dye ink with a little bit of water, and I'm just going to do some splattering of black ink. And that's just to give it just a little more. When I die cut the center out, I think it's just going to help bring in a black font that I'm going to be using. And I'm just going to clean that off. And then we need to let that dry, which I guess it was because I used the heat tool. So if it's still wet, let it dry. But because I had used my heat tool and I came back. So that's the power of a video, is I took a dinner break. So this is me after dinner, so everything was dry. And now I am using the, I know they're by Tailored Expressions, but it's like the outside in circle scallops. And it is a very cool stamp set. So it does your scallops, but inverse. And my idea is to cut this through this, attach this card panel to a Cookie Monster or a blue card base, but I want that to also have the cutout because I want you to have this Action Weeble Wobbler little unicorn swimming in the inside of the card, but he peeks through the front. So when I show you the picture at the end, you'll be able to see it a little more clear. But because of all my thickness of the cardstock, I'm having to do it in layers and run it through several times. So using some kind of temporary adhesive or post-it tape really helps with that to make sure your die doesn't move. And you'll see I need to do it again because the sides were not cutting through yet. Okay, so there is the panel cut through. And I'm going to be using, there are two scallops or wave or water stamps in there, and I'm just going to be using the Lawn Fawn Jet Black ink, and I'm just going to stamp those in a line alternating between the long one and the shorter one. And I just keep closing it because I do want you to be able to see the little wave lines through the inside to the outside. Okay, and then we're going to be working on the sentiment. I wanted it to say, just floating by to say, ... have a relaxing summer in the inside. So to help this purple stand out amongst the watercolored panel, I am going to be using just a black cardstock. So I'm putting that down, and then I'm going to put the just floating by to say sentiment on top. And it is a thicker cardstock, so you just want to make sure you add enough glue. And this is where I'm going to do the mini action wobbler, and I'm going to try to hide it behind the inner tube, and then I want it in the center of the card. So I just make sure that is all adhered in. But that is what I had envisioned, where it just pops up and you open it and he's in the inside of the card. I just think that's a fun little detail for an interactive card. And now I'm going to stamp in the inside. I do want to stamp low enough to where you don't see this sentiment from the front, and it just says, "Have a relaxing summer." And then I'll be adding some stickles to the unicorn horn and the hooves. And it is just the Stardust stickles, so it's a clear glitter. And I just love how it wobbles when you push it. And then I'll be using the Tailored Expressions, her new glitter drops in silver. And these things are very staticky. I had a hard time getting them out of her little test tube she sends her products in, and then I have a heck of a time flipping them over. I don't know if it's just because they're lighter weight and they have glitter, and it's hard to see, so I do a close-up, but I'm using an odd number, and I'm just going to do some at the top and some at the bottom. And they come in several sizes. So I end up using 7. But you'll see me fumble with these. They were giving me a hard time, but they look adorable on the card. And they kind of help bring in the Stardust stickles. And I'm just attaching those with my art glitter glue, and it looks very sparkly and very pretty. So just floating by to say, have a relaxing summer. Well, thank you so much for watching another video of mine. Be sure to like and subscribe so that you get notified of my next video. Thanks guys, and I can't wait to come back and do another video. Bye.